Hello, Andy from SSL here, and thank you for joining me today as we explore Fusion in more detail and run some audio examples so you can hear what it's all about. All of the examples featured in this demo, plus a load more, are available to download from the SSL website as high-resolution audio files. Just follow the link in the description below when you've finished watching this video. The first audio example we have is a Lower Than Atlantis live in session version of Ain't No Friend. Let's have a listen to the mix without Fusion on.
Hope you know you ain't no friend of mine.
As you can hear, it's a really well put together mix, but let's see what Fusion can add to it. Now I'm going to begin by engaging the vintage drive section. Now with each of these examples, I'm going to take the controls perhaps a little bit further than I normally would to show you the extremes of what Fusion can do. And then I'm going to dial it back to a setting I actually want to use on the mix. Let's take a listen.
Can't pretend that we'll be friends, it's the end. I'm gone, I'll brush it off. I've learned a lot in love and loss. Move on. Had fun, but now we're done and I'm doing fine. Never looking back. Miss me now that I'm free and you're left behind.
Now, as you can hear, this section does give a little bit of a level bump. So I'm going to use the output trim and the master bypass to match the levels up a little bit more closely.
Getting back on track. I'd be the same if I realized I'd be the same as you. I guess that you were the one who got there first this time. I've gotta call it a day because
I quite like that setting. So vintage drive is our unique non-linear saturation circuit that's designed to bring added strength and cohesion to the mix. It's doing a number of things. It's introducing additional harmonics to the signal, whilst also introducing this kind of soft, saturated compression effect. On this track in particular, I've gone for a midway density setting, which gives me a good balance of both. If I go for a lower density, I get more harmonics, less compression effect. If I go for a high density, I get the opposite. Next, we're going to move on to the Violet EQ. Now, the Violet EQ is a two-band minimum phase shift EQ design based around gentle shelving filters. It's actually the first new SSL EQ design for more than 25 years, and it draws on SSL's legacy of carefully selected frequency points and response curves. Let's have a listen.
you ain't no friend of mine. No, no, no. Said I'll leave this place, you have your space and time. Oh, better off anyway, yeah, yeah. But I should have seen the signs. Hope you know you ain't no friend. I hope you know you ain't no friend of mine.
I really like what the 50 Hz and 8 kHz settings are doing for this track to add some bottom end weight and top end sheen. Next along, we've got the high frequency compressor circuit. Now this has been put into Fusion to act as a kind of harshness control to tame brittle sounds in the top end. Let's have a listen.
Should have known, I'm alone, I suppose. Wait, now we're apart. Don't need a heart, a fresh start today. I'll be the same if I realize I'll be the same as you. I guess that you were the one who got there first this time.
That's just reining in the top end and taking that element of fizz out and getting it under control. The really cool thing is how the Violet EQ and high frequency compressor circuits work together. And if I do a couple of bypasses with them both, you'll see what I mean.
Ain't no friend of mine. I'm gonna do what I wanna. I'm gonna do it all when I want. This blessing, I've learned my lesson. No one else can have love you've got. But the show, it must go on, even if it is a...
So the high frequency compressor allows me to push a little bit more into the top end of the EQ because it then catches it. So I can get extra brightness but without the harshness. The final section we've got to look at for this example is the stereo image section. Now this is based on mid-side processing. The width control affects the overall level of the side signal, whilst the space control manipulates the bass frequency content in the side signal.
Yeah, yeah, I should have seen the sign. Hope you know you ain't my friend. I hope you know you ain't my friend of mine. I'm gonna do what I wanna, I'm gonna do the way I want. This present, I've learned my lesson. No one else can have love you've got. But the show, it must go on, even if it is a solo one. I gotta call it a day.
So I like the way that the width is opening the track out and the space control is injecting a sense of depth to the mix. To end this example, I'm going to do a couple of complete bypasses of the whole unit so you can get a before and after idea, and I'll just use the output trim to match the level down again.
Said I'll leave this place. You can have your space and time. Better off anyway. Yeah, yeah. But I should have seen the sign. I hope you know you ain't my friend. I hope you know you ain't my friend of mine.
So there you go, added strength, cohesion, depth and character to this mix. The next audio example we have is a track called Upside by an artist called Admit. It's a pop track. Let's have a listen without Fusion first.
It's the upside of being down. It's the upside of being down.
So let's begin by engaging the vintage drive section.
Tell me that you lose the shape, head out tonight for some fame. Shine a light. Maybe share the little things you do. Start it up and kick it through. Don't be polite. I got a feeling that you got your groove. Now you're in the mood. Oh, what went wrong? I can't imagine that you dreamt of this, but it's been too long.
I like the added grit it's giving to the mix there, and this time I've gone for a lower density setting of about 3, and it gives me more harmonics and less of the saturated compression effect. Moving on, let's engage the violet EQ.
It's the upside of being down. It's the upside of being down. It's the upside of being down.
This time I'm preferring a setting of 30 Hz for the low end and 8 kHz for the top end, adding some bottom end weight and top end sheen. Next, let's go on to the high frequency compressor circuit. As you can hear, it rounds off the top end, any top end brittleness nicely. Once again, I'm going to bypass both the EQ and the compressor circuit so you can hear what that sounds like. Once again, they're working quite nicely together. Next up is the stereo image. Let's inject some depth and width to this mix. I really like what that's adding. Finally, we're going to take a look at the custom transformer circuit. Now this circuit does a number of things. Firstly, the transformer itself adds subtle low-end harmonic content, whilst the drive of the surrounding circuit creates a favourable top-end phase shift. Listen carefully. It's subtle, but when you take it away, you really miss that added sparkle that it brings. To end, we're going to do a couple of complete bypasses of the whole unit so you can hear before and afterwards. Fusion can also be used to greatly enhance the sound of any stereo stem or instrument. In this example, we're going to have a listen to a drum submix and what Fusion can do for it. Let's have a listen to the dry drum mix. Okay, this sounds nice, but I really want to beef it up and add some aggression, and I'm going to do this with the vintage drive circuit. I'm also going to use the input trim to help me drive it even harder. Let's have a listen. I like what it's doing, and even though the peaks are pretty closely matched, the one processed with vintage drive sounds a lot louder, and that's mainly due to the soft compression effect and added harmonics that it's bringing. Next, let's take a listen to the Violet EQ. I like the weight that's adding, and I'm just going to use the high pass filter to tidy up the bottom end a little bit. That's sounding great. Next, I'm going to introduce the high frequency compressor circuit. That's given me some nice rounding in the top end in the analog domain. Next up is the stereo image. That's adding a nice sense of air around the kit now. Finally, let's push in the custom transformer circuit. Again, it's just notched that sound up another level, another 5 to 10%. Finally, let's do a complete bypass of the whole sound. So there you go, a radio-ready drum mix. For this final audio example, we're going to take a listen to Fusion on some backing vocals. Now, Fusion can work really well on vocal sounds, and in this example, we're simply going to use the stereo image circuit and the transformer to improve the sound. Let's have a listen to the dry stem. Okay, let's start with putting the stereo image circuit in. I really like the way that the reverb tail is accentuated by the space control and the width just widens out the whole thing nicely. Let's put the transformer in. So I love the sparkle that the transformer adds on top of that sound. For a final comparison, let's go complete bypass to the two circuits engaged. So there you have it. Use Fusion to enhance any vocal sound.